Revolution Radio proudly presents, live from the heart of the Blue Ridge, Roanoke, Virginia. It's the Just Bernard Show with host Bernard Alvarez. Join Bernard as he shares topics that reveal the real matrix and empower your human experience, including world liberty, the esoteric, suppressed technologies, spiritual ascension, and human consciousness. Humanity has awakened, and our time has come to realize our full potential. And now, live from the Star City, your host, Bernard Alvarez.
Well, hello everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Just Bernard Show here on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. We've got another fantastic show for you today. We are going to be joined by publisher and author Brenda Knight in just a few moments. But before we do that, let me, of course, welcome our assistant producer and empowerment director of the G.I.C, Reverend Trevor Knott, is joining us from Winnipeg, Manitoba. Hi, Trevor. How are you today?
Hello. I'm doing good. How about you?
I'm cold.
Same here.
We've just got a really cold snap right now, and I have to give you guys a little comedy thing right now. My little cat Sophia wants to go out, doesn't want to go out, wants to go out. I open the window, she wants to go out, she wants to come back in, she wants to go out. Right before the show, she started crying. So I have the window open right now, and it's 37 degrees, just to let her have her way. But I just want to remind everybody that Trevor Knott is live in the chat room. If you are on freedomslips.com, you can click on the chat function at the top of the page and can join the live chat. Please feel free to post any questions for myself or for Brenda Knight or for Trevor, and we will make sure that we get them answered on today's broadcast. A little bit of news I just wanted to share with everybody is that we are working on our holiday schedule for our G.I.C shows, and of course here the Just Bernard Show here on Revolution Radio, and we've got some really great guests coming up. A couple of which, I must say, Brenda, are her authors from her publishing company, and we're very happy to have Kawana Halsley and Mark Nepo coming up in the next couple of weeks as well on the GIC.org. We have some live webcasts coming up I want to tell you about. We've got Chris Kaler, who's a healer. I think we had him on the show here several weeks ago. We have a live holiday broadcast on December 17th at the GIC.org. And as well, we have Peter Sterling is going to be doing a special Christmas Eve broadcast here, actually, on Revolution Radio. He'll be joining me. It's been over a year since we've had Peter on, so I'm looking forward to that. As well, let me just wish everybody a very happy Thanksgiving week. It is a very important week in the United States, I should say. For me, spiritually, Thanksgiving is really about being aware of what you're grateful for, having gratitude, walking in that gratitude, living in that gratitude. And Brenda Knight's new book called The Grateful Table it touches on some of that, and there are a lot of different subtopics about that book that I want to talk about, and that's why I'm glad that we have Brenda coming on. For those of you that don't know, Brenda Knight is a publisher and editor who writes about women's history and issues affecting women's lives today. She is the author of Sheroes, The Poetry Oracle, Wild Women in Books, and the American Book Award-winning Women of the Beat Generation. Brenda also does volunteer work with women newly diagnosed with breast cancer, and she believes that everyone has the inalienable right to the pursuit of happiness and lives in one of the happiest places in the world, the San Francisco Bay Area. So without further ado, let us welcome Brenda Knight to the Just Bernard Show. Hi, Brenda. How are you today?
I'm good, and I'm so glad to be here.
Me too. You were our very special last guest on our Blog Talk radio station before we moved to Revolution Radio. So I just want to thank you for being that most important farewell show for us.
Wow, and I'm happy to say hello again on the other side.
Absolutely. And I just want to let you know how much we enjoyed that show as well. So how have you been, Brenda?
I've been really well, and I've been waking up every morning and counting my blessings, literally.
Good. Very, very good. As I just want to point out that Brenda is the publisher at Viva Editions, and as many of you know, many of the authors that come on the Just Bernard show are signed with Viva Editions. So we want to thank Brenda for all of her hard work and all the wonderful authors that you guys have under your umbrella.
Well, thank you. You know, I will say that I am blessed in the author department, and, you know, in a way it has to do with relationships. I mean, some of these people I've known for 15 years or even 20 years when I actually originally worked for HarperCollins until I realized I didn't love working for Rupert Murdoch. I didn't even know who he was at the beginning, but and so Phil Cousineau is an author that I brought with me from HarperCollins, and you know, we'll have to get him on the show one of these days if he hasn't been already. And I feel like I can be a good in the world in that I can be a vessel or a channel for people to bring their wisdom to people. I mean, we all need practical tools and help and advice and wisdom and also inspiration. So that's what a lot of our Viva authors do, is they inspire.
They sure do. They really do. And you've had some wonderful, well, I mean, one of my favorites, of course, is Tony Burrows, who
mine too.
I've got to tell you, it's because of him. I am literally doing a weekly intention circle here locally because of his inspiration.
Oh, does he know that?
No, not yet. I'm gonna have to have him.
Oh my gosh, I will make sure and tell him, and then you guys have to hook up. You know, I think I remember telling you that I had written the introduction to his book, Get What You Want.
Yes.
Where I share the story of how, like, basically, you know, intending, which always begins with gratitude, really saved me. I was going to live in my car. I was heading for homelessness, and the practice in his, you know, the practices and setting intentions and stating gratitude for the good of all absolutely saved me.
Absolutely, and I can relate to it. Let me tell you, I can relate to it. So let's kind of let our new listeners or people that have not met you yet on this radio station tell us a little bit about your background and how you got involved in doing the work that you do. I Googled you the other day, and I was like, oh, she was a bit of a goth chick, but.
I know, I have many incarnations. It's almost like I'm a multiple personality. You know, I really just follow my fascinations and follow my bliss, just like the great Joseph Campbell said to do. And but in The Grateful Table, you know, my new book, I do talk about how I grew up on a farm. So I lived on a dirt road like a mile up a holler in West Virginia. And it was very humble circumstances. And at the time, you know how kids are, like, I wasn't grateful as a child. But, you know, now I look back and as I mature, I think how lucky I was to live in that beautiful place, you know, to have the sweet family that I do have. And that, you know, I think I was doubly blessed to, like, live in nature, because I think, for one thing, I remain grounded for life. When you live on a farm, grow up on a dirt road, up a holler, you can never get too full of yourself. So I consider that a blessing.
Oh, absolutely. And now looking back, it feels like a blessing, right?
It does. At the time, I was like, do we have to live out here in the sticks? But, you know, now I'm like, oh my God, it's so beautiful. And when I go back and visit, like, I just can't even believe, you know, it's like should be a national park or something. There's actually very rare wildflowers that grow on our family farm that are found in very few places actually in America. And, you know, there's just a special condition there, like, and I mean, how wonderful is that? I mean, just the stunning beauty of the wildflowers and the trees and the forest, and it's just, you know, it definitely, you know, kept me interested in gardening. I mean, I'm a very avid gardener and seed saver and ecomaniac, really. I think I have to just, like, you know, come out and admit that I'm an ecomaniac. Like, if people throw things away that could be recycled or composted, I, like, chase them down and stuff like that. But I love me some planet. Let's put it that way.
Absolutely. You're not one of these that, like, that dry paper towels now, are you?
I do. I mean, you can get another couple of uses out of them.
Very cool. I laughed because I had a roommate once who literally used to hang them up in the kitchen and let them dry out. I was like, but they're all stained up with food. She's like, we can still use them.
Sounds like I have a friend there in your roommate.
So, Brenda, tell us a little bit what brought you into not only the writing field but the publishing field. What was the inspiration for that? Was it to communicate? Was it to inspire? What was it for you?
You know, I think you'll get a kick out of this. I mean, obviously there wasn't that much to do, like up a dirt road, like a mile away from everyone else. And so I read and read and read. I mean, I had chores to do. And I did explore nature, you know, for hours at a time. But there weren't any kids for miles around, and my two sisters were much older than me. They were like 8 and 10 years older. They were like, you know, almost like another generation. So I was on my own, and so I explored nature, and I read, and, like, you know, I loved, like, Little Women and, like, the classics, you know. But then once I got a hold of The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, I was, like, enthralled. I just, like, could not get enough. I've probably read, like, those books, like, maybe, like, 20 times each, like, including the trilogy. And so I was so inspired by J.R.R. Tolkien that I wanted to be like him, which is, like, the funny part, right? Like, no one can be like him. He's one of a kind for the millennium. But I read his biographies. I told my mom, I said, I want to read about his life and see what made him tick. And so we had to drive like 3 hours to Columbus, Ohio to find a bookstore that had his biography. And then I realized that he studied medieval literature and languages and medieval studies. That's what I had studied in college. Oh. And also I decided that I would be a writer and that I would write fairy tales and, like, neo-folklore. And I did for a while, but, like, that, you know, just didn't, you know, I could see that I wasn't going to go far with that. So then after grad school, I realized that in order to have a job and a roof over my head, I was going to have to live in a different economy because West Virginia still just doesn't have a good economy, and I didn't want to work at Walmart or something, right?
Right.
So I got to the San Francisco Bay Area, and first I worked in import-export. That's quite a story there. I thought I had found my destiny because basically that's going around the world and shopping on somebody else's dime, right?
Nice.
Sounds pretty good. But, like, I did everything. I packed things in the warehouse. I answered the phone. I did sales. I even drove a forklift in the warehouse. I wanted to prove that I could, you know, do whatever it took at the company so I could be a buyer and get to travel. And finally I made it and got the job. And then the owner of the company sat me down and said, I'm going to show you the factories we're going to visit. And I almost fell over on the floor because I saw that there were children making the products, and I didn't know it.
Oh, wow.
So I was literally in shock, and I was saying, those are kids. Those are children. We're selling things that are made by children? I mean, I couldn't get over it. It was India and China and South America. And he said, well, they consider themselves lucky to have a job, and so should you.
Oh, Lord.
And I know. So then I went home and I had a dark night of the soul. We've had all have those, including your
Yes.
listeners, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And I came back in and I quit. Now, San Francisco is not the kind of place where you can't have at least one job. So I would talk to my friends. I said, oh, my God, what am I going to do? Did I make a mistake? But I couldn't work there exploiting children. And one of them said, her name is Maria, and she said, well, all you want to do is, like, talk about books. Why don't you get a job, like, in publishing? So I talked my way into a job at HarperCollins, and I loved it. And it was the Harper San Francisco division, which is now called Harper One, and it was the religion and philosophy department.
Oh, great.
And so I was like, I just was in love. I couldn't believe I was getting like paid to read and talk about books. And so I started out in sales and marketing, and I loved it, and I loved working with the authors. And then I just realized, like, this fits, this clicks for me. And so I wanted to become, an editor and publisher because I felt like I had a knack for seeing smelling a winner, if you will, really, like with Tony Burrows. I knew I had a winner. I have to tell you that, like, when I felt Tony Burrows' envelope at the bottom of the mail bin that was like, there was like 40 manuscripts on top of it, and I felt the manuscript, something tingled in my fingers.
Nice.
And then it was like 10 p.m. and I stopped what I was doing and like read till midnight, picked up the phone and called him and said, I want to acquire your book. So I realized I found my passion.
Sounds like it, and it sounds like it found you as well.
I like to think that it was reciprocal, but, I think even way back when I had my delusions of grandeur as like a teenager, a Tolkienite teenager, it was still about writing and creativity and imagination and ideas and really, helping people, because, I think that there's no way you could say like Lord of the Rings is like self-help or anything, but it really deals with good and evil. It really, really does, and so it's a morality lesson all along the way.
It certainly is, and I have to admit I've never gotten through the entire trilogy. I think I read The Hobbit in high school and maybe the first and half of the second book in my college years of the trilogy. But even in watching the films, the story itself to me, it's very symbolic of life on the planet Earth as well, especially when they're showing, I already forgot the dark guy's name, that eye thing or whatever, where they're showing like the trees being torn down and all this, factory stuff.
Right, the ants, right.
Yes, oh my God, that's going on today.
Saruman, the wizard Saruman, yeah.
Thank you. I was like, that's exactly what's happening today. We're seeing the battle between saving the planet and the people versus the corporations sucking everything up and using all of our resources. So I really love that those stories for that particular reason. Like you said,
Tolkien really was I don't even think the word environmentalist existed then, but he hated that the beautiful, garden and forest that, the UK was, that Britain was at the time, was being, cut down. He hated any cutting of trees.
Well, I'm glad he did. Thank you, Tolkien.
Yeah, I know. He just completely rocked.
Absolutely. Now, to change the discussion up just a little bit, because I didn't know. I have always heard of the book Sheroes, and I didn't know that you were the author of it, and I'm embarrassed.
Right. I did it under a pseudonym, Varla Ventura.
That's why I didn't know.
Right.
Tell me about the story of Sheroes, and how did that come about for you?
Oh, that was really fun. As you know, when you introduced me, women's history is my thing, and women writers and poets. And so I think when I was researching women writers for Wild Women in Books, I kept finding women that had done great things that weren't, writers necessarily, like scientists and mathematicians from like the 1700s and 1800s. I mean, some amazing women. And so I started just keeping the files. I mean, it literally just started with me making files for like, you know, I just said, well, I'm just going to keep track of these women and their life stories and like just start keeping a file. And before I knew it, I had like 400 files. And I said, this is becoming a book. It's trying to write itself. And then I realized that I could make it kind of really fun and start a campaign to get the word Shero into the English language. And so I published the book, or wrote the book, and it got published by Canary. And we also started a campaign with Webster's Dictionary and also the Oxford English Dictionary. And we came really close. It turns out there's like a number of usage that they're able to track somehow. I don't know how they're able to track it, but I believe them. And it fell just under like the required number of usage to make it into the dictionary. But I still hope that one day Sheroes does make it in. And, you know, that was just me wanting to, again, share the inspiration that I got from these women who were like doing like unsung heroes, you know, unsung Sheroes, really.
Yes, absolutely. Another word that I love is herstory instead of history. I think that's another way to get into our vernacular. It's always his story, not her story. So maybe Sheroes and herstory would be a great addition to our language for sure, and another great book perhaps.
Right. Tell the readers to like start using it, because the more usage it is, especially probably in like text, email, you know, etc., then that gets the chance of Sheroes getting into the dictionary much higher.
Well, I'm definitely going to start using. I will start using it again, definitely. It's funny. When did you write Sheroes? When did that come out?
That was like 98.
I was going to say I remember using that word a lot, like in the early thousands. So maybe that was probably from your book. But definitely time to pick that up. Time to reawaken that particular usage for sure. We've only got about 5 more minutes on this segment, but I was hoping you could tell us a little bit about your book, Women of the Beat Generation, because it's probably one of your most popular books, and I'm assuming one of the ones that you have a lot of passion for.
Oh, absolutely. That was a labor of love. I had no idea what I was doing. I took another run at grad school when I was working at HarperCollins in the 90s, and again, like medieval studies, you know, thanks to Tolkien, sticking with that. And I took some electives, and one of them was like 20th century American literature. So, you know, we get through Twain and, you know, all the early writers, still not enough women for my taste. Then we get to the beats, and it's just Kerouac and Ginsberg and William Burroughs. And I raised my hand, and I said, what about the women of beat writers?
Right.
And the professor said, well, there really weren't any. And I said, I know 2 off the top of my head, like Diane DePrima and Janine Palmy Vega. They were actually pretty well known and like even more prolific in my opinion. And so he said, well, you know, nobody knows about them, so you know, I've not heard of them. And so I got kind of, I guess, a little aggravated, and I felt challenged. And so I went off to find more of the women. I mean, I was going to just thinking maybe I would like find 5 or 6 more, but I found 40. And
wow.
So it really did turn into this passion project. And I, you know, didn't have much money, but I got one of those airline tickets where you can like piece it together for like a really low price. You just had to like make all these connections in smaller towns, you know, like Cleveland and what have you. And so I went on the road. I went to Minneapolis and Chicago and New York and Los Angeles and Seattle, because I wanted to do, first-person interviews with the women and record them. And I'm so glad that I did, because, I got to know them, and I was so inspired by them and how daring they were. And so in the introduction to Women of the Beat Generation, I talk about how the Beats paved the way for the hippies.
Yeah.
They absolutely did.
Absolutely.
Because they were the ones that threw off the conformity of being like a 50s housewife with like the brand new refrigerator and the apron and like a chicken in every pot. And they just broke that down and like broke the chains of domesticity and went out there and explored and were ferocious and feisty and daring and biracial marriages and, traveling the world and becoming a Buddhist and sitting on the mountain in Japan. And, these women just did astounding things. And I really wanted the world to know about them. And I still want the world to know about them because, the vast majority of people still think it's all about Jack Kerouac and his buddies.
Yeah, it's true. That's very true, and I've got to say for me the Beat generation, like you said, was the awakening of the whole hippie movement, but as well it was also I feel the opening of the whole consciousness movement, where people were okay. Well, we're going to take a break, and we'll be right back with Brenda Knight.
And now back to your host, Bernard Alvarez.
Welcome back to the Just Bernard Show here on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. We are having a wonderful conversation today with publisher and writer Brenda Knight. Brenda has a new book. I don't know if it's out yet or coming out, but it's called The Grateful Table. Welcome back to the show, Brenda.
Glad to be here.
Tell us, now, let's talk a little bit about your new book, because I have so many different topics I want to talk about. Now, what is The Grateful Table, and is it out yet?
You know what, the technical pub date is tomorrow,
Wonderful.
Thursday, Thanksgiving. But actually, we did sneak it out early so that people could buy it and have it at their Thanksgiving table. So it is available at like Barnes & Noble, your local Metaphysical Five and Dime, your local gift store, and, of course, ye old Amazon.
Right on. Great. And I love the intro of what would happen if you sat down to dinner with Alicia Keys, Drew Barrymore, Deepak Chopra, Ben Kingsley. Is this the premise for the book?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been practicing gratitude for a while, as you know, and I credit gratitude with saving my life. But I've been saying grace for years and years since the family and sort of collecting unusual graces and gratitudes. And I have to, say that as a publisher, I do sort of observe what other publishers do. And I thought somebody needs to do like a really fresh treatment about it, like not your grandmother's book of blessings, but she would like it too. And so I wanted to just like mix it up and not have the same old, bag of tricks, because I actually have probably almost every book on gratitude and book of blessings, and I see a lot of repeats. And, once you've been like a writer and editor for a number of years, it's like your eye will just go to it. I'm like, my goodness, this one blessing is in every single of these books
Right.
of graces. So I decided to add, an eclectic, and I like to think electric approach to it. So there's everyone in there from Sir Ben Kingsley to Jack Kerouac, our old buddy Jack Kerouac,
right on.
to things from the King James Bible and Kanye West, who just worked the K section for a while. And I love it when people like open it up and flip through and they see things that, yes, of course, this is lovely. Yes, this is a nice grace. And then they say Tupac Shakur, and they're like, what? And that's absolutely one of my top favorite quotes is Tupac.
And what is that quote?
That one?
No, I have not.
Yeah, I gotta find that one.
Uh-oh.
Let me use my. But wait a minute. Let's see how Where's Tupac? Where are you, Tupac? I'll find him, but I should just memorize it. But it's like, we are roses, and he's talking about, like, would you criticize, like, a rose that, like, was grew through a crack in the sidewalk for having bent petals? And he's saying, no, you wouldn't. You would just be grateful that it grew in its place. And he said, well, we are all roses, and these are my damaged petals. And I found it. I'll read it. May I?
Yes.
Okay, it's on page 51 for anyone that wants to make sure to read it at the Thanksgiving table. So page 51 of the Grateful Table. We are roses. We wouldn't ask why a rose that grew from the concrete for having damaged petals. In turn, we would all celebrate its tenacity. We would all love its will to reach the sun. Well, we are roses, and this is concrete, and these are my damaged petals. Don't ask me why. Thank God and ask me how. Tupac Shakur, page 51.
Wonderful. That's beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you. I know. I love that one. It's absolutely in my top 5.
I love it. I love it. What I love about the book, for me, especially as a metaphysician, is I really feel that it is so. It's something we have forgotten to bless our food. Those of us that are involved in energy healing or Reiki healing or anything like that, we know that our energy does transform things, whether it be on a subtle level all the way to a molecular level in some instances. So to bless our food is just something that is really just going to help us and our health in the long run. A lot of people, especially some of the alternative healers that we have come on the shows, talk about, blessing your water, blessing your, blessing your food, blessing your beer, in order for it to give you the highest good and the highest vibration available to you. So to have a book with so many different types of people participating and sharing their observations and their quotes is really something very special. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you. And you can also use it for bibliomancy.
Yeah.
Do you practice that?
All the
time. That's what people did in the Bible Belt, but can absolutely, I've used it to sort of feel connected to, the energies and the spirits and the divine, if you will. And so this makes a wonderful claromancy book. And a book that I claromancy from almost every day is actually Tony Burrows. Like, if I feel really we all have little problems that crop up in our life, no matter what we do. And I think a couple of weeks ago, I was really feeling, challenged by something. I can't even remember what it was. I think it was, just an author not quite understanding an editorial direction at the time and kind of squawking, and that's okay. That's part of my job. Is
part of the problem.
To make the book the best it can be, even if sometimes that takes some convincing. So I was feeling just sort of oh boy, and I needed some inspiration, and I claromancied with Tony Burrows' Get What You Want, and it nailed it. I have to say that that book gets really specific, sometimes right down to the very topic. Has that happened to you?
All the time. Literally all the time. It happens to be. I do my intention in the morning, of course. Every morning I wake up, I walk out to my kitchen window that overlooks the mountain with the big star on the top, and I look up at the star and I do my intention. However, throughout the day when I'm getting frustrated, I keep the book here on my desk in my little home office section. And I just open it up when I'm getting down, when I'm getting frustrated, when I'm getting trolled by crazy Facebook trolls, or something
Oh yes,
like that.
Absolutely.
It's you know what? Let me see, and let me tell you, it does literally change. It changes your perspective when we do something like that, whether it be Tony Burrows' book or somebody else's book. Quite honestly. Before Tony Burrows' book, I used to use my own book, The Book of One, which I self-published 5 or 6 years ago.
Oh, okay.
And it was it was a channeled book, and it was just a book of quotes, literally quotes. And by the way, Brenda, I am working on a book of quotes, by the way. But that'll be
well, all right. I'd like to hear more.
Yes, I'll definitely tell you more. But I will say that the idea of bibliomancy, and I think maybe a lot of our listeners may not know what we mean by that, is bibliomancy is literally, grabbing an inspirational book, whether it be the Bible, whether it be Tony Burrow's book, whether it be The Grateful Table, and just asking for an answer and opening up the book to a specific page, and that usually ends up being an answer for you. Now, I've got to share that you're going to like this. I have a cute anecdote about that, which it's a dark anecdote. Back in
we can handle it.
Well, in my early 20s, when I first got involved in metaphysics and doing what I do and just started acknowledging my gifts, I used to work for one of those tarot hotlines. And worked for the tarot hotline. They were like, well, you don't have time to do a full reading. I'm like, what do you mean I don't have time to do a full reading? They're like, open the tarot book to a page and read that. So it's kind of like they wanted me to do bibliomancy. Mind you, I think about 3 or 4 weeks later, I ended up quitting because I felt I didn't feel it was a real reading, and they were charging them God knows how much money. But so people, if you go to a tarot, hotline, they might be just reading bibliomancy. So be aware of that. But I will say, 9 times out of 10, it was pretty on key. Absolutely. Now,
so you'll be happy. You must have noticed that there's about 5 Tony Burrow's quotes in The Grateful Table.
Well, I don't have the book yet.
Oh my goodness! I must shoot me your address, like bknight@cleospress.com, and I will sign one for you.
Love that. That would be great. That would be awesome, Brenda. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. I want you to have it, and hopefully it'll be like almost as good as Tony Burrow's for claromancy and bibliomancy. But yeah, there's about 5 of Tony Burrow's in there, and so you might use The Grateful Table for bibliomancy and end up with a Tony Burrow's one. But I have to tell you that you wouldn't even believe how much music it is to my ears to know that a book that I edited with the intention that it would help the world helps you on a daily or weekly basis with Tony Burrow's book. I mean, I almost feel like I can retire, but that's exactly why I'm doing what I'm doing, and I'm so grateful for you to say that, and I'm so grateful to have meaningful work.
And it is. What you're doing is very meaningful. I just want to remind our listeners that, we have at least, let's say an average of one of your authors on our show every month, and have for the last couple of years now. Anyone from Tony Burrow's to yourself to, I believe, I'm not sure Peter Sterling was one of yours, but I know he was working with Eileen Dunn. But,
yeah, I heard him. He's a good guy. Yeah.
He's awesome. He's absolutely awesome. And I know we have Kawana Halsley coming on next week. I can't wait to talk to her.
Her writing sings off the page. My God, what an editor's dream. She's a writer's writer.
Really fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. So it is, if we made emphasize the beauty of working with something that you love to do, that helps to encourage humanity, that helps to heal humanity and inspire humanity, what a beautiful place to be. I mean, absolutely.
Yeah, I am so lucky, and I will also add that publishing is hard work. When some of my friends seem to have the misbegotten idea that it's sort of glamorous or something, I'll say actually digging ditches and bricklaying is probably easier. But at this point, I love it so much, it is absolutely worth the effort, and especially to hear that books we're doing helps you and helps some listeners, because isn't that what it's all about? Isn't that why we're all put on this planet?
I couldn't agree more, and I couldn't agree more with your first statement as well. Publishing, I do production, and it's the same. I feel the parallel of that. It's a lot of work. People think, oh, you just, guests call you and you just put a link out and you do a radio show. It's not that easy,
Right. But you're helping people, absolutely.
Absolutely, and that's all that matters. That's really all that matters, and I feel that many of us are finally coming to that crux. For me, it is the crux of humanity. Are we going to be? And it's funny. One of my series that I have scheduled that I'm working on is service to others versus service to self, and there seems to be so many of us that we can, while we are working in service to others, we can still. Even if it's a meager living, we can still make a minor living in working in service to others. And so many people, even if it's part-time, are moving into that consciousness of living in service to others. And I love the fact that we're breaking the boundaries. So many people feel that, let's say a good example is, working for a big publishing company. Oh, they're corporate owned. They're not going to help anything. Nobody's going to, get any healing or anything like that. Meanwhile, you're a great example of that, of as being a publisher working in a publishing house that is sharing so much information with the planet and getting so much change done on the inside. And I feel that's where the change happens and will happen is as we change the way we think, we will begin to create a better world around us.
Exactly, and the way we speak and, our intentions and everything, and the Tony Burrows style. Every once in a while I'll just pick up the phone and call him and say, like, what's going on, Tony? Like, things are feeling pretty wild out there. And so I called him last week, and he said, we're just having to be even more careful about everything we think and say. And he said it's just a time to, just double down, and he said it just means the change is unfolding, but we need to be ever more vigilant. So I did want to share that little jewel that I learned from Tony last week.
Well, thank you for that, because I just recently posted something about what was it? It was an astrological thing. I think it's the last Jupiter something conjunct of the year or something like that.
And Saturn, I think.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, which Saturn's always tough because the planet of the teaching planet, right?
Yes. And it's basically telling us that we have to look out for what is worth it, what we think is worth it, and to be strong enough here, I found it. I'm going to share it with you. The last of the 3 Mercury-Saturn conjunctions. Focus on what feels impossible. Decide whether to feel it is impossible, and set goals in case it actually isn't. So that's tough, with so many of us thinking that we're moving into the right direction and then having to really question that. So it goes very much with what Tony Burrows was saying to you. Right.
I just feel like so fortunate to have that he sent an envelope to me, which I felt the electricity of what was in the paper, in the envelope, and then, got to publish his first book, The Code, and then, his new book, Get What You Want, and we're working on a new book, too. And actually, I am telling people that The Grateful Table had a baby. While I was working on it, I was inspired to start on another book, and so in the fall, we'll have one. And it was interesting because the idea came to me as a whole, and, you probably have that because you're so spiritually inclined and a seeker, and hopefully many of your listeners do too. Like, when an idea just comes, to you as a whole, you're really on to something. And so it came with this quote. I mean, from my bio that I work with the newly diagnosed. I volunteer for the American Cancer Society and work with people that are really scared and, just needing somebody to talk them through them, give them advice, and just do a lot of listening, really. Yeah. Listening is an act of love. And so, I like to honor, women who, have been through it and what we can learn from them. And so Elizabeth Edwards, I felt she was the wife of John Edwards, not such a great guy, but she herself actually I felt like was a pretty wise woman, and I read her biography when it came out at the time, and there was a quote from it that I kept, and it ended up in the Grateful Table.
Oh, cool.
And so I'll share it with you. It's on page 43, and I call it. I gave it a title, which is "Be a Good in the World." But I have found that in the simple act of living with hope, in the daily effort to have a positive impact in the world, the days I do have are made all the more meaningful and precious. And for that, I am grateful. And, so I was honoring her and, women in cancer survivors and everything. And when I titled that, when I thought, what is she saying here? And I realized she's saying, be a good in the world. And so that's what I titled her quote. And then later in the day, I said, that's a book. That's a book. Be a good in the world. And then I thought, surely somebody else has written a book, Be a Good in the World. And so I Googled and went on Amazon and double-checked because I thought a title that great has got to have been taken, and it hasn't. And so I'm 3/4 of the way done with it, and so it's going to be like 365 acts of kindness, compassion, generosity, and pay it forward. Because I also worked on the Random Acts of Kindness books in the 90s, which was really lots of fun and such a wonderful way to tap into the very best of humanity.
Well, by all means, get your tech guys to create a widget for websites, because I would love to have one of those on our website every day.
All right, I will.
That would be awesome, because I do feel it's so important that we do remember not only gratitude, but remember to be kind to one another. And if we can do random acts of kindness and perhaps even share that on our individual websites every day, it's a really good reminder, and if people do it, it makes the world a better place. All the better.
Absolutely. I was on a Unity radio show, and I also gave a talk at a Unity church. I got to tell you, I was so nervous. I hadn't been in a church for since West Virginia, and I was sort of thinking wow, I hope the place doesn't go up in flames while I'm in it. I mean, I just sort of I'm not a churchy gal, but I actually loved that Unity church in San Francisco, and I think I might be a Unity churchy gal because to them God can be anything. This is funny. I said, well, could God be like a diaphanous blob of matter out in deep space? And they were like, yeah, if that's what God is to you, absolutely, that's what God. And I said, well, I think it might be something like that.
Well, we have a break coming up, Brenda. We're going to have to stop, and we'll be right back after these messages. Welcome back to the Just Bernard Show here on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. We are having a wonderful discussion today with Brenda Knight, discussing her new book, The Grateful Table, among other things. Welcome back to the show, Brenda. I wanted to ask you, tell us a little bit about your personal traditions when it comes to the holiday season, especially the Thanksgiving dinner. What is the grace like for you in your house?
Well, we all we start with saying what we're grateful for, and so usually there's some tears and everything. I mean, because we really speak from the heart and everything. And while the turkey is sitting there steaming and waiting for us, we go around, and every year it's the same group of friends. As you know, I'm 3,000 miles away from my family in West Virginia, so it's my hand-picked family out here and boyfriend, and so that's usually 20 minutes there and a few hankies, and it's a beautiful thing. I remember, some of what we said, 5 years, last year, 10 years ago. I can still remember what some of the people said because it's that touching and meaningful. And so this year I'm hosting, and so I'm going to get up at the crack of dawn and put in my organic turkey that I'm going to be brining. And, we'll have all the veggies and vegetarian options and even pumpkinless pumpkin pie, if you can believe it. And but we will start off by saying what we're grateful for, and that always includes grateful for each other. And then we're actually, this year, we're going to read from the Grateful Table. I had it was so fun picking out the blessings and graces and everything for November and Thanksgiving week for the Grateful Table. And I'm going to read the one that Abraham Lincoln, the speech he wrote about after the Civil War.
Oh, yeah.
And about being grateful for the healing of the country. So when you get your copy of the book, I think you're going to really enjoy that. And it brings a little bit of a serious tone, but I think it also, reminds us of what we've sort of been through collectively and in our country, and also to actually be grateful for our freedom, which we kind of take for granted here.
Yeah.
But not everybody has it. And so the name of his speech, it's like November 24th in the Grateful Table, but it's called These Great Things, and it is just beautiful. I will say that Abraham Lincoln had a way with words.
He certainly did.
Yeah, and so he was just saying that, let us be consistent with divine purpose to the full enjoyment of peace, harmony, tranquility, and union. But it's a 3-page grace in the Grateful Table. So Abraham Lincoln was really bringing it.
He certainly was for 3 pages. I thought you were going to read them. Like, okay, go ahead. Thank you for condensing it for us.
Yeah. Well, I love that he called upon the divine. I just think, I guess he was Christian. I don't know exactly what flavor, Christian he was, but he was pretty spiritually advanced. He just really was. He was a wise man, and he withstood the terrible, terrible pressure. I mean, think how terrible the pressure must have been for him to be president, of a divided country where he technically wasn't even president of half of it, but still trying to preside and bring together peace and stop, run a war at the same time he's trying to stop war and put an end to slavery. I mean, he was amazing.
I would say so, absolutely. And what a terrible time that was for him as well. It seems that the world has changed quite a bit. Unfortunately, we're seeing that division on a global scale now.
Right.
At least economically. And I like the fact that you said that we must, no matter how horrible life in the United States might be on a philosophical level, on a political level, even on a corporate level, there are so many other, sadly, there are so many other countries around the world that do not have what we have, in the sense of, being able to walk down the street with your same-sex partner, or walking down the street not covering your face, or driving if you're a woman. I mean, there are so many.
Oh, I know. That's so crazy. Yeah, that makes me crazy. I love that those women protested by driving.
Yeah, that was great. That's absolutely great. Absolutely. But again, just a reminder, in the service of gratitude, this week would be a great time for us to remember. It's not perfect, but it's better than some places, and probably worse than other places. Don't get me wrong, but the reality of it is that we're not dealing with child labor. We're not dealing with oppressed women, oppressed LGBT, to an extent. So there is a lot more freedom to express ourselves on a day-to-day basis. Maybe not so much on an activist basis. as an activist, I do get frustrated that they have these free speech zones and and whatnot. Now, I think activists are considered terrorists according to the Patriot Act, but again, that's on paper. That's not our day-to-day, hour-to-hour, living situation. So there is a lot to be grateful for, absolutely. With gratitude being the topic, especially of your book and for this week, of course, what are some of the some advice that you might have for us to perhaps be more aware, or maybe bring out things that we can be grateful for, to remember what we can be grateful for? I know that, I'm not sure if it's in your book, 10 Ways to Cultivate a Grateful Heart. Is that actually in the book?
Definitely. I touched on that, right. I included some things from Nina Lesowitz, absolutely. And then I also included some of my own wisdom, the little bit that I have, like, for example, on September 27th, page 154 in the Grateful Table, I say, catch them if you can, and that, like, in this world today, it's so easy to, like, focus on the negatives, just if you turn on the morning news, the morning TV news, or look at the newspaper, you can get there. And no matter what you're going through, and we all do, like, weather tough times, but the thing is that, like, you could go negative and wallow, but in these moments, it's specifically then that gratitude can be used to alter this way of thinking. Find the positives and accentuate them is the easiest way to turn those proverbial frowns upside down and gray skies back to blue. So try catching someone doing something right for a change and not something wrong, and give praise for a job well done. And, any chance you can, say thank you. And, that's something I try to do at work, actually in my relationships with my friends, and with my authors. My authors will email me and say, like, well, I got myself on this, like, I'm doing this book event, like, at the library in Kennebunkport, and I'll say, good job, and I really mean it. I really am praising them and acknowledging them and thanking them. And I just think that, like, somehow, I don't know whether it's like the world of social media or whether, like, the different generations, just sort of think differently, but people aren't as gracious and graceful and grateful as they need to be. And I'm hoping that, like, with books like Living Life as a Thank You that, Viva published, and The Grateful Table, that we remind people of the importance of the simple virtues: kindness, generosity, patience, gratitude. A little of it goes so long, and really and truly, like, cultivating a grateful heart is so important. And if you can only have 1 minute a day to, like, sort of meditate or think about gratitude, like, just take that 1 minute and really quickly think of, and if you can, like, write down, like, on your little planner or whatever, or post it or scrap of paper, write down 3 things you're grateful for. And so I wanted to ask you, Bernard, like, without thinking, just right off the top of your head, what are 3 things you're grateful for right now?
Oh, immediately I can tell you I'm grateful for my home. I love my home. It's tiny, but it's perfect for me. I love the work that I'm doing. I love the G.I.C. I love the people that I work with. I love the friends I've made throughout the G.I.C. Meeting people like yourself, Trevor Knott, our hundreds of thousands of followers on Facebook. So I'm grateful
Good job.
I'm grateful for that. And last but not least, of course, I'm very grateful for my health and not looking my age.
Good job on that, too.
Grateful for my DNA.
Yeah, that's lovely. Yeah. And so how do you feel? Do you feel any different than you did, like, 2 minutes ago?
Just by acknowledging that, absolutely. My heart just started swooning. My shoulders just got lighter. I think that's
an amazing thing. It's absolutely amazing. So if you just do that, like 1 or 2 minutes, like you can totally turn around. I call them gratitude adjustments, but it really is an attitude adjustment. And we also quote Dr. Michael Emmons, this neuroscientist and physician, that about 6 years ago came out with a study that he had conducted that showed that like active gratitude, like acknowledging it, saying it, thinking it, actually does wonderful things for your physiology and also your neurotransmitters and creates new neuron paths. So not only does it make you healthier, gratitude makes you smarter. And I'm sorry, like it doesn't get better than that.
I couldn't agree more, Brenda. And if I can just share ever so quickly, and I need to do this again. Now I'm catching myself on things that I stopped doing. I used to have a gratitude rock I used to keep in my pocket. I'm going to have to grab one right now and put it back in my pocket. And what I liked about the whole gratitude rock exercise, for lack of a better term, is that you put a rock in your pocket and you basically forget about it. A little smooth stone, a little, decorative stone or something. You put it in your pocket. And every once in a while, you'll reach in your pocket to grab something, whether it be your keys or your coins or something like that. And you grab the stone, and it reminds you to be grateful. It's just a reminder to be grateful. And I did that for years, and I guess one day I got lost in the wash or something, and I haven't done it for a couple of years now, but I think it's something I would like to reincorporate into my daily life again now that we're having this discussion. So, yes,
well, I think that would be wonderful. I mean, yeah, because you're already doing great. You'll probably start looking younger too.
Even more younger, absolutely.
Right.
You posted something. Well, you didn't post that. I'm so caught up in the world of social media sometimes. In the Grateful Table Blessings, Prayers, and Graces. You're number 3 on that. Says post a thank you to all of your Facebook friends, or your page or your blog. Send an individual thank you. I don't know. For me, that comes very natural. I have been posting thank you to everyone on Facebook, probably every day, every other day. I feel it's very important when especially when you have as many people following you or taking your advice or listening to you. To me, it truly is an honor. It's an honor to have this radio show. It's an honor for me to be reaching, tens of thousands of people. It's an honor for me to reach tens of thousands of people on Facebook or YouTube or on our website or something like that. And, I'm just, I like to say I'm just Bernard. I'm just doing my thing. And it's not something I did on purpose. I'm just doing it. So when people are that into what I'm saying, it is very, how shall we say, humbling. It's very humbling. So I've always done that. I've always said thank you to everybody. And I would just like to put that out there that, even if you have 5 friends on Facebook, go out there and say thank you. Thank you for being my friend. Thank you for liking my post. Thank you for being a part of my consciousness, and you being a part of theirs. By them being on your social network, they have given you permission to be a part of their day. They have given you permission to be a part of what they're thinking. And that truly is an honor, because let me tell you, I am very vigilant about what I allow into my senses. I'm very vigilant about what I give attention to. It comes from years of practice meditating and whatnot, but I'm very vigilant about what do I allow into my consciousness. So
I think that's wonderful.
We need to be grateful for the fact that people allow us into their consciousness. Absolutely.
Yes, well, people are lucky to have you as a guide, and I'm sure, people learn from example. So just by you being gracious and grateful, like on your Facebook and like in your social media and also in your radio show and the work that you do, people are picking that up by osmosis. You're modeling that excellence for them. And, as I said a couple of minutes ago, I think the younger generations, in part it's because, like, both parents work, even grandma and grandpa work, so there's no, elders or family to be, they're busy keeping a roof over the head, and so they don't get the example of like the elders, basic things like manners and courtesy and kindness and patience. It's all instant gratification. So the more we all model, and I guess like sort of, there's the be the change you want to see in the world. Like, so, consciously modeling that is marvelous, and that's a good reminder to me to like sort of ramp that up and be even more conscious about it. Tony Burris would be so proud of you.
Oh, thank you. I'm proud of him. Let me tell you, I'm very grateful. I'm very grateful that he's on this planet at this time, and you and everybody else that is doing this great work that we're doing together. The reality of it is that I feel we're all each other's teachers. We all are, and we all have to be grateful for any nugget of truth or wisdom that we come across that aligns with our vibration. And you as a publisher, as a publisher really are doing the greatest service on a literary level in order to get this work and this information out there. So I thank you for everything that you're doing with Viva Editions, by all means.
Well, I love it, and I think one of the real things that I didn't like sort of set out to do, but it was a natural side benefit, is that it's fun too, and I know that we both work hard, but I know you have fun too with your work. You have fun at your job, like you're a fun person, and when you can bring that through, I think hopefully that people. I never even actually thought about this before, but I guess you inspired me to think about it. I hope that that sort of sense of fun and inspired and a fun approach to inspired enlightenment comes through in the Viva books. I hope you can feel that when you're holding Tony Burris' book, Get What You Want, and when you hold the copy of The Grateful Table that I will sign and send to you today. I hope that comes across. It's a funny thing has been happening with The Grateful Table. I did it. It's such a pretty, lovely package, that you do want to put on your nightstand or put on the table at Thanksgiving. But it's so, the people that made the book, that bound the book, did such a good job, and I'm so grateful for it, that you just want to hold it and touch it and actually rub it on yourself. And I thought, well, of course I'm going to rub the book on myself. I know that sounds kind of gnarly, but it's just adorable, and you just want to hug it, the book to yourself. Every single person I've seen, I handed the book to or picked it up, does the same thing. Man or woman or whatever, they pick it up and they hold it and they sort of hug it to themselves. And I just thought, now, wow, I couldn't have planned that. How did we get that so right? But I think it was just where I tell people that this was a book that was a relatively easy book to do. It was fun to put together. There's just so much wisdom packed into the 300 plus pages. I mean, there's just so much wisdom in there, and the book feels good too. There's something about it that just puts a smile on your face. So I'm grateful to the people who made the book, and to Kara who produced it, and to the copy editors that found my little errors, and so somehow this sense of joy that I had in putting the book together comes through into the physical manifestation of the book. And I don't know how we pulled that off, but I hope we pull it off a lot more.
Oh, that's wonderful. It's funny how it all just comes together sometimes, It's sometimes you're working with people that you don't even realize that they have your vision or you have the vibe of the project, and it just comes into this beautiful package like your book. That's wonderful. That's absolutely wonderful. I have a kind of an off question because during your comment just now, I have to ask you, what's it like to be edited as a publisher?
Well, I guess in sort of the in keeping with the wanting it to be a feel-good project where there was no suffering, zero suffering project.
Right.
I said I don't have any ego about this. Like the ego is like on the shelf. Please make it a better book. And then they did. I mean, I'll specifically give a shout out to Kerouac, our managing editor, who always improves anything she touches. She has a gift, and I'm grateful to her. So thank you, Kara, catching her doing a lot of things right. And then also the designer, and this is kind of funny because part of my job when I came in, they were like, and then you need to tell the designers how you want it to look. And so, I always sort of think like, wow, and I find model books like, it should be like this, but different with our own spin on it. And then when it came to my book, The Grateful Table, I said, I want to see what you would do if, like, you just pull it out your own creativity. I want your creativity. Please do what you think would be good. Like, you're the designer. I'm not. You go. And the designer's name is Frank. And I'm telling you, Frank knocked it out of the park. When you see The Grateful Table, you're going to think it's pretty, lovely book, a lovely package. And, I think that, and I have to say that I felt a little proud of myself for not control freaking the book. It would have been easy for me to do. In fact, it probably was even really, my job to do it. But I wanted to see what they would bring to it. And I think maybe that's another reason why the book has a good feeling about it, because every step of the way, somebody had an opportunity to put their mark on it, put their stamp on it, and improve it every step of the way. I mean, I just provided the raw material, in truth.
Right, exactly.
They made it a book.
I'll tell you, I've only worked on one self-published book, and I did have my transcriptionist / partner for the book, Annabelle Montalbano, I love dearly, was my editor as well, and it's kind of scary to notice your punctuation mistakes and all of that, and people say no, it would be better if you did it like this, and you're like, but no, that takes away from the message or anything like that. It's beautiful that you turned it into this collective thing. We'll be right back after this short commercial break with Brenda Knight.
And now, back to your host, Bernard Alvarez.
And welcome back to the Just Bernard Show here on Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. Before we go jumping back into our discussion with Brenda Knight, I just want to let everybody know that I believe it's the 4th episode of Contradiction, the series produced by Roxy Lopez and myself, will be released on Thursday, and that episode will be discussing living in the 3D paradigm and the contradiction of it. For those of you that aren't aware of the series, Roxy and I kind of developed the series over the last summer, and we felt it was a time basically to help our viewers, our listeners, dealing with the contradiction of being whether you're spiritual, whether you're an activist, and just the day-to-day contradictions that we deal with. Those of us that are looking toward ascension and whatnot will definitely enjoy the next episode, Living in the 3D Matrix. There are many contradictions that we deal with day to day, and I hope that does give you some answers. That will be released on my YouTube channel at youtube.com/justBernard, and of course, Roxy will have it on her Truth Denied YouTube channel. For those of you that are listening and maybe don't remember, Roxy Lopez is also a Revolution Radio host here. I believe her show is on Friday nights now, and I believe she has one tonight as well, so make sure to check it out. Anyway, bringing Brenda Knight back into the show. Brenda, this is our last segment of the show today, and I was hoping to ask you some different questions.
I welcome you to.
Wonderful, wonderful. One of the things that I'd like to ask you, especially with someone who has worked with so many different inspirational and, how should we say, wise authors and whatnot, what do you see as perhaps the common theme or the common message that all these wonderful authors that you have worked with, from Tony Burroughs, et cetera, that they're trying to get across to humanity? What is their message that they're trying to get across?
I would see my authors as evolutionaries, and I think they're saying that we must evolve, and that it's a personal evolution, revolution, and that collective, and that everything from being very aware and very conscious of your thoughts and what you say, and that you're creating your own reality. So I think if I were to try to boil it down into a nutshell, is that we're co-creating our own reality every day and every moment. Let's make it a good one.
Yes, absolutely, and that's a great message. Absolutely. How has working with these inspirational authors affected you in your personal life?
Oh, I learned from it, absolutely. When I went through when you take your copy of, do you have a galley or a finished copy of Get What You Want, Tony's book? Do you know if it's a galley or a finished copy?
I'm not sure.
Well, I was going to say, I think my introduction is in both, but
yeah, I have the introduction on this one.
Okay, great. And so, I went through this terrible time where I was facing, homelessness, and I'd wrecked my own finances, in part by my own errors and mistakes and willfulness, and then also in part by tragedy, loss of a long-term boyfriend to cancer. I would say a good bit of it I sort of brought down on my own head, because I went through this time period where I think got off the gratitude train and became an ingrate for a while. I thought I deserved to have a fancy title and be a vice president, and so I left a good job so that I could get the title. I guess I was literally entitled. And also, I thought I needed to own a home and not rent, and so I got in a situation where I really couldn't swing the finances. I could only swing it if my boyfriend helped me. So then when he was diagnosed with stage 4 and passed away a few months later, he wasn't there to help me. And so I was spiraling into this, sinkhole of debt and sadness and grief and dysfunction. And I was became even sort of ill, and I just couldn't work and couldn't function, and I stayed home, and I went back to my roots, and I started reading, and I was reading the books that I had acquired, at Harper San Francisco, at Canary, Random Acts of Kindness, Mark Nepo's Book of Awakening, The Code, from Red Will Weiser that I had acquired, Tony Burroughs' book. And I started reading the very wisdom that I had helped bring out into the world, and it helped me. It saved me. And so, so I have to say that, it's kind of ironic that, I acquired these books and got them published, but, reading them just as a reader, just like anyone listening, just like anyone walking to, a Barnes & Noble or a bookstore, just reading the books as a reader really turned my life around, because I was headed for trouble, and ever since then, I think that's why I every morning start off with my speaking my gratitudes and thinking about it. I do a visualization to start each day. I knew I was going to be on this radio show, so I set an intention that it would be wonderful, and that I would give as much as I receive from you, and that we would actually be interesting, for people to listen to. And so I set a big intention around that, and spoke my gratitudes and did visualization. And I do it every day, and it re-grounds me. And I am so grateful that my own what I do for a living, and my intention to help people actually helped me, which is sort of a really funny thing to think about. I was doing this like, well, I publish books that will help people. Well, lady, you ended up helping yourself.
Yeah. I can relate to that quite a bit, absolutely. Doing this work is very healing. I feel that just being around this work, just doing the work, and I feel the more we share, the more we get back, if that makes, not to be cliche, I should say, but absolutely, the more I give, the more I'm going to get back.
Yes, you're absolutely right. Tenfold, really.
Yeah.
And I did want to mention, and you'll see this when you get your copy of The Grateful Table, that I'm giving the royalties back because when I got to the end of the book, I felt just the process of doing The Grateful Table was reward enough, and having the beautiful book that I can hug to myself. And so I'm giving the proceeds to this company called BOSS, BOSS, which is Building Opportunities for Self-Sufficiency. I usually give to Glide Memorial and a couple of shelters and places that feed the homeless and re-educate them. And so I did some research, and I realized that just a few blocks away from Viva Editions headquarters is this company that specializes in helping women and families and young people, specifically teenage girls. When I met with them, I was sort of shocked to learn that the vast majority of homeless people in the Bay Area are teenagers, and more than half of them are teen girls that run away from troubled homes or whatever their reason is. They take flight. Then, if they're homeless, obviously, from, day two. And so BOSS re-educates them, gives them clothing, gives them computer skills, life skills, gives them resume help and outfits to wear to job interviews and training on job interviewing techniques. And so, I just, like you said, I want to give back. And I think it's our duty, too. One of the quotes from Shirley Chisholm in The Grateful Table is, service is the rent we pay to live on this beautiful planet.
And that's a great quote, and it's so true, absolutely. And as I am writing notes for my next project, living in service versus living for self. I wonder if I could ask you. You, like myself, went from the mindset of me, the titles, the salary, the nice car, the nice home, I deserve this, I deserve it. Again, living in self versus living in service. That transition that occurs. I want to break this up into a two-part question. One, what was it that stimulated that change? What was the catalyst? And two, what did you do during that transition not to really freak out, because it's a scary transition?
You mean when I went through my really down period?
Well, when you transitioned from the idea of, I deserve a corporate title, I deserve...
I believe that once I turned 40, something clicked in my head, and I think it's like human nature or something. Maybe it was an inside-out midlife crisis or something, but I don't really think of it that way. I think that something in a template was there in my brain, just waiting for me to turn 40, and then the clock started ticking, and it was you're supposed to own a home, you're supposed to have, this fancy job, you're supposed to have all this, and so I just was an automaton or something. I wouldn't stop until I had that title, at a job that was, unbelievably stressful and difficult. And so I think that I just fell into, fell into the basket that so many people do. This is the way you're supposed to live. And I started going for it. And it was only when I was really up against the wall I had to be pushed right up against the wall before I had my learning. And now that I have it, like, I cling to it and I will never let go. Because it was scary. I mean, I was like, like really facing like, wow, what did you do to yourself, Brenda? Like, what were you thinking? And I think the truth is I wasn't really thinking. I went on some kind of autopilot that, happened to me. And I bet I'm not the only person that goes onto some kind of autopilot.
No,
like,
not at all.
Yeah.
The reason why well, first of all, I just have to share with you that for me it was my 40th birthday as well. If anything, it might have been a couple, months before that where things really started changing, and it was kind of like it was time to get serious. And again, I don't think it was a midlife crisis, but perhaps. Maybe that I had a little DNA switch as well. But, we are all, I hate to use the word, we're programmed. We're programmed to believe that this is what success means. This is what that means. This is what that means. I mean, I remember being so excited because I was getting an honorary doctorate. Well, meanwhile, it doesn't mean anything to me. I could care less, But then it was so important because it would look good on paper and selling and, selling this and selling that. I feel that, at least for me on my particular journey was how shall we say, I'm trying to think of the word, the pretense was lost and the genuine spirit came through. And I think that's a part of the journey for most of us on the planet, where we're going through that evolutionary awakening process that we finally decide, okay, now it's time to be genuine. But it's a very scary process. It's a very scary process to let go of that old programming.
Right. Well, boy, I'm glad that I'm sure glad I let go of it because, like, none of that means anything. I guess, that maybe this is a benefit, a non-programmed benefit of maturation is that, like, with each passing day, I get clearer and clearer about why we're here and why, in addition to service to others, but it's like, how well did you love? Did you give enough love? Did you love enough? Did you show it? Did you say it? Did you give it? Did you do it? That's the whole thing. It doesn't matter, like, what car you have, what title you have, how many companies, what your stock option, which portfolio, real estate. None of it means a thing. The only thing that means anything is, like, did I love enough?
Absolutely. Oh, that's so true. We have 5 more minutes, but that would have been a great roundup for the show.
Oh, gosh, I'll try to come up with something else.
No, I have a great question for you before the end. However, I can't help but think about, right now in the world, well, maybe not so much anymore, but I like the change that's happening because, so many people ask you, what do you do? When you meet someone, what do you do? Like it matters what your career is or how much money you make. At least maybe it does to some people, but it doesn't to me. I get invited to all these like black tie things or these like political things where I'm going to meet the mayor or something like that. I'm like, do you really think that's going to impress me? I really don't care his title. I want to know what kind of person he is. I don't care if I'm meeting, Hillary Clinton or the Pope or for that matter, Deepak Chopra. I want to know that they're a good person when I'm face to face with them. Their reputation means nothing to me. I don't care what their title is or whatnot. So when somebody says, everybody's always like, well, what do you do? But that's where I came up with the term just Bernard. I'm just Bernard. I'm just Bernard. I
wondered. I always wondered about that, actually.
Yes, that's where everyone goes, why do you lower yourself? I'm like, I'm not lowering myself.
No, it's very relatable and like endearing or friendly. It's very friendly.
Right, so I try to let people know it's like, look, I am just being me. I'm just doing what I do. If that means producing a radio show or writing a book or teaching a class or doing a series or video webcast. That's just what I do. It doesn't matter. I'm just Bernard. So when people ask me what I do, I say I'm just Bernard, and they turn their head. They tilt their head to the side. But for me, I will say that we're seeing a big difference now when people say that. It's like, no, I don't mean what do you do for a living. I mean, what are you doing for the planet? And I like the fact that we are changing that. What are you doing for the planet? Kind of like what you said, the quote of, being in service is our rent, for living on this particular planet. So people ask, what do you do? What do you do for me? What do you do for the planet? And I think that's a great way to change the way that we think as a whole. And it's very, very, very important. And you're doing a great job, by the way, of doing that, Brenda. So thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I honor my friend Eileen, actually, in the Grateful Table. She picks up, in her path as she walks, she picks up garbage or recycling or glass or whatever, and carries it in a bag, and then each day recycles, compost, whatever. And to me, some people might drive down the street and think oh, she's like a crazy lady or something like that, a bag lady. And I just think it is the most beautiful act of kindness and generosity and service. I just think it's marvelous. And I also like to stop and think about, she's picked up a mountain. If we were to put it all in one place, it might feel like a huge building or something, or be a mountain. And think she got that to the right place. It either went back to the planet in compost or went back in recycling. But whatever it was, she did such a an act of beauty to us all. And so one person's picking up trash is another person's the act of kindness and senseless beauty.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, we're running out of time, and I'm going to ask you to keep it brief. But if you had one message to tell all of humanity, what would that message be?
Well, I would take the quote from the Grateful Table that's my second favorite by Daphne Rose Kingma, and I would say, quote her in this way: saying thank you brings more love into the world. So thank you.
Oh, that's perfect. That's absolutely perfect. For those of you listening, by all means, you can learn more about Brenda and, of course, Viva Editions at www.vivaeditions, editions.com. That's vivaeditions.com. The name of Brenda's new book is called The Grateful Table as well. She has Sheroes, a poetry oracle, Law, Women, and Books, and so much more. But thank you so much for joining us today, Brenda. We really appreciate it. Stay on the line so we can talk for a minute after the broadcast.
Wonderful.
And for everybody listening, we're going to have another Viva Editions author joining us next week here on the Just Bernard Show. Kawana Halsley is going to be joining us. Everything, I forgot the name of the title. What is it, Brenda? Do you remember?
Everything I Need to Know I Learned from My 6-month-old.
Beautiful. That's beautiful. And I'm very excited for having her on next week. So, thank you, everybody. We love you very much. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.